Welcome back to Donghua Recapped. In today's video I will be recapping the Sword of Dawn. It begins as we see a spaceship flying through outer space, when suddenly it is hit by an asteroid which causes major damage, and the main part of the ship disassembles. A girl walks through a dark hallway, spotting something in the distance. Whilst this is happening, people are running away from a huge red monster that is causing havoc. They try their best to fight back and some of them eventually escape, leaving him stuck behind a stone door. The girl looks at the gold she has just found, and opens up the tomb in front of her, but then she notices the people who have just abruptly entered the room. They notice her and condemn her for trespassing in the dungeon of the House of Cecil. She is grabbed by the person in the tomb but manages to escape from its grasp, and they send a strike at her before the guy puts a sword to her throat, so she passes over some of the gold that she stole, reluctantly giving it all up. Strangely, a hand arises from the tomb, and then the person inside starts to open it up and climb out. They hit him over the head though, which sends him back into it, but they don't have much time to celebrate because the monsters on the other side of the door are making an effort to get through. So with all their strength they try to keep the door closed, and start charging up a fireball spell which is used to send a blast of fire at the monster and send it flying. The thief attempts to escape in the midst of the chaos, but she starts screaming when she notices the guy getting up again, and this time there is no one to stop him as he walks slowly down the stairs. They are faced with the challenge of this mysterious man and the monsters behind them simultaneously. They send an ice strike at him, but he doesn't even need to move to evade it. His sword glows orange and he charges toward them as the monster's hand breaks through the door. But unexpectedly the mysterious man heads toward the monster and hits it with his sword, completely suppressing the danger. He starts to talk to them in a friendly manner, and he asks if he is the Ancestor Lord, to which they say yes, so he mightily asks why they hit him over the head. They explain that he has been asleep for 700 years. He remembers that he was in a plane crash, and his soul got trapped on a satellite in another world for hundreds of thousands of years. But when the asteroid hit the satellite, his soul was transferred into the tomb. He tries to figure out whose body he was put into, and he figures out that his name is Galway Cecil. The girl figures out that he is telling the truth and he really is the Ancestor Lord. He asks them to introduce themselves, and the girl tells him that her name is Rebecca, and that her auntie's name is Heidi. He asks who the current lord of the house is, to which Rebecca says she is, and he praises her by saying that she strikes harder than the others. He asks for the names of the others, and the knight introduces himself as Byron, whilst the thief denies the claim that she is a thief and says her name is Amber. Galway tries to wrap his head around the events that have just occurred, figuring out that they were getting chased by monsters and caught a thief who woke the Ancestor Lord. He says that they need to have a group chat, but behind the door they hear some noises, and then the room starts to rattle. Rebecca vows to protect him, and Heidi asks if he is really there to help them, to which he says that he isn't sure why he woke up but will help his descendants out no matter what. They establish that they can't get out the way they came in since it is guarded by monsters, and Amber suggests that they find a more unconventional way of escaping. Heidi isn't a fan of this, but Galway asks Amber what her idea is, and she says that she'll need payment to know the idea. He persuades her with a gold coin and says that she can become a lifelong citizen of the Cecil to live a more honest life. Heidi still isn't impressed with her, whilst Rebecca says that she is happy with whatever the Ancestor Lord wants to do. She gets the gold coin but still requests that she won't be held accountable for opening the tomb. He promises her and also gives her another gold coin, so she agrees to show them the way out. She explains that there are 3 levels to the dungeon, revealing that there is a secret door on the 2nd level which leads to the Great Mountains. She penetrates the wall with her hand, opening up the secret door, as she explains that lockpicking is a standard skill for a thief to have. Heidi continues to show distaste towards Amber's profession, but Galway says they don't have enough time to be arguing, and so they head through the secret door. Behind them, the monster that was trapped under the rubble makes a slight movement. Amber brings them to the trap room and says that if they don't do it correctly, they will face the consequences. She makes her way through, trying to evade the traps, and the walls continue to rattle, which makes them quicken their pace and make it through the maze of traps too. They make it through and enter a room where there are images of the Ancestor Lord leading the people into the new domain 700 years ago. But Heidi explains that a lot has happened since then and the House of Cecil has fallen. Rebecca asks if the Ancestor Lord will help them defeat the monsters and assist them to return the House of Cecil to its former glory. Amber points out that the exit is at the end of the tunnel ahead of them, but in the tunnel is two monsters which Galway spots. The descendants are on edge about this, but he assures them that their team will be able to handle them. But Rebecca regrettably says that the only spell she knows is the fireball spell. He is shocked by this, and she also says that Heidi's spells never hit the target, so he says that they will lure the monsters into a trap tunnel. The plan begins as Byron lures them toward the chandelier, and when they're under it, Rebecca uses her one and only spell to drop it onto them. And then she strikes them once more with the spell before running away to lead them towards Heidi, who manages to hit the target this time with one of her spells, leaving Galway and Amber to lead the way through the trap tunnel where the monsters recklessly charge in, resulting in one of them falling through the floor, shortly followed by the other two. Galway only narrowly manages to escape the danger of also falling into the abyss, grabbing hold of the ledge and pulling himself up. Suddenly another monster runs at them, and it comes very close to them, but Galway swiftly strikes it and sends it into the abyss. They all celebrate the victory, and then the exit door opens as they walk through it into the light of the outside world. The Ancestor Lord gazes into the distance and notices the color of the sky, deeming it very bad. He says that he is looking for his mobile phone to take a photo, but they don't understand what a phone is, and they explain that the sun has been this size because of the outbreak of demons recently. Rebecca looks in the distance and shouts in horror, as she sees the village ahead of them has been completely overrun with monsters who have killed everyone and destroyed everything. Galway remembers that the same thing happened 700 years ago, and then Byron explains that the entire empire of Gondair fell into this state last year, saying that the domain is beyond the point of saving. They're abruptly startled as a huge dragon swoops in overhead, and they're all in amazement of what they're witnessing. But all Amber cares about is how much a dragon scale would sell for. It heads into the village, and Rebecca curiously wonders if it can help them defeat the monsters as it sends blasts of fire at them, causing even more damage before finally flying off. He says that they should head to one of their other fortresses, but the look on their faces tells the story as he figures out that this was the only domain they had left. And Byron even explains that the dungeon was rented, so Galway says that they should back there instead. In another village where it is completely peaceful, we see some horses and a carriage going down the street. Inside of the carriage is a powerful man, who demands that they go faster in order to escape the smell of the poor people from Cecil. And then he asks about Rebecca's whereabouts, but nobody in the carriage knows. The speed of the carriage is so fast that they even almost run over an old man. And then they leave the town of Tanzan, which Heidi mentions to Galway, saying that a guy called Philip took the citizens there following the flood of monsters. As night edges closer, they take a rest in a forest where Heidi uses her ring to minimize the size of her staff. She explains that the ring allows her to store and withdraw all sorts of items, and that is one is of the highest ranking since he is the Ancestor Lord. He excitedly tests it out but tones his excitement, saying that he has a lot of things to recall after 700 years of sleep. He tries to store a tree with the ring, but Heidi says that he cannot store things that are beyond the level it is operating at, and explains that the ring will repel. She demonstrates this by getting Rebecca to make a fire with her fireball spell, and then telling her to repel it with her ring, but she fails as it is beyond her level. Galway doesn't accept this though and pulls a sword out, slicing the tree up into pieces and then pulling them into the ring before throwing them back out. He teaches them that even though they can't do certain things of such a grand scale, it doesn't mean that they can't adapt to achieve it in a different way. And he compares the human brain to a computer's GPU, however they are befuddled by the terminology that he is using. He says that Rebecca can use this advice to improve her fireball spell and divide the attacks into threads, and he tells her to practice it, so she does, picking up small amounts of fire into her staff but not using all of her energy to get all of the fire at once. However, the power level still causes it to explode, so he has to save her, and as a result he is sent down a strange tunnel of different colors, before finding himself grounded and in front of a woman who asks him if he is prepared to carry out a deal which he is presented with. He asks what it means, so she changes the deal slightly so that he can understand better. And suddenly Amber appears and pushes him, which makes him choose an option that he didn't mean to pick. We go back to the real world where Amber is trying to wake him up, and he is understandably frustrated with her but accepts that if save is the option he picked, then he will have to deal with it. She is confused by this and says that he just fell into the Shadow Realm. He opens the book that he was given in the Shadow Realm and starts reading it. The powerful man arrives at a castle where his servant explains that the citizens of Cecil work 5 days a week with 2 rest days. But he says that that is preposterous and tells him to make them work all day every day with no rest. But he changes his mind and says they can have 1 day of rest. They learn that Rebecca has arrived, and the doors are open as he goes to hug her, but he accidentally hugs Galway instead. We learn that his name is Lord Andrew, and the knight behind him is called Philip. They take a seat, and he says that he truly sympathizes with the situation that the citizens of Cecil are currently in, and he says that he has arranged plans for them to stay in his domain. However, he needs money for the arrangements. Rebecca says that Philip brought gold and silver to pay for them. However, Andrew says that the gold and silver only covered the medicine costs. He learns that they're completely penniless, and gives them a book of the expenses that they're still yet to pay. He gives them an ultimatum, saying that they could give their domain to him to pay off the debt, and trying to peer pressure her into signing the contract, but Galway flings his sword at him, landing on the contract as he says that Andrew isn't getting a single piece of their domain. He then proves that he is the Ancestor Lord as he gives him a closer look at the blade he possesses. He forcefully tells him that he can either believe that the sword is real or be killed. So to avoid this demise, Andrew gets down on his knees and acts gleefully about the Lord's return, and he shows him all the possessions he has that are from him. Galway asks how he knows so much about him, and Andrew gives him even more praise for his many accomplishments. They head out of the castle and Galway tells them that Andrew was just acting, but now he is at least fearful of the Ancestor Lord and will allow the citizens of Cecil to reside in his domain. He declares that they are heading to the royal capital, whilst Andrew peers at them from the window and says to his servant that if that is real, Galway, then they have struck gold because of the many privileges he has due to his status. But that's where this video ends. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.